Are you worried about a mortgage application, or maybe you've had a mortgage rejected? Now don't worry, I've had a handful of mortgages rejected over the years. In this video, we'll describe why these rejections happened, but most importantly, what you can do about it as a property investor. Now I'm going to be talking about 3 particular mortgage rejections and how I overcame these obstacles and all these properties ended up being mortgaged. So if you're trying to find a way to beat the mortgage lenders, please do watch this video all the way through to the very end. At the end of this video, I'll be sharing 3 killer tips and lessons when it comes to applying for mortgages. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marco. I'm a portfolio landlord, property investor, developer, and mentor. And I'm incredibly passionate about helping people invest in property. So today is a great day. Very briefly, my oldest son, Hugo, who's nearly 3 years old, told me today he gave me verbal confirmation that he would like to work with daddy and join the family business when he is of age. So Hugo, I'm holding you accountable. When you're 12 years old, you'll be doing all the viewings, the check-ins and the check-outs, and I look forward to that. So let's get back to the video now. So this is the first example I'd like to share, the first rejected application I experienced in 2019. I'm going to describe why this happened and also how I overcame this obstacle and the property ended up being mortgaged. So back in 2019, I was looking at buying my very first block of flats. Up until this point, I hadn't even managed a block of flats, okay? So we're approaching lenders who were open to the idea of lending my company the money to purchase a block of flats. And we found a good lender. My mortgage broker spoke to their BD, their business development manager, and everything seemed rosy and okay. And the BD manager basically said, right, well, submit your application and everything will be okay. Now, we submitted the application and it became apparent very quickly, just after the application was submitted, that they didn't want to entertain this. And the reason was that I didn't have the experience of managing a block of flats, which is true. Now, it's kind of like the analogy if you're graduating university and you're looking for your first graduate job, and employers who are looking for graduates also stipulate that they require experience. It's kind of like that. You don't necessarily get the experience until you get the job, and it's like property. Well, how on earth are you supposed to buy a block of flats if you don't already have one and don't have that experience? Not everyone has the cash to be able to buy a block of flats outright, right? So I was a bit disappointed. Again, we went back to the lender, but they weren't having any of it. Now, what I suggested was, okay, that's fine. I understand that. But what if I can outsource the management of this block of flats to a local company that have experience in managing blocks of flats? Makes clear, logical sense, right? That's why I suggested this idea to the broker. And the broker passed this on to the lender. However, they still weren't comfortable doing this. Now, this was particularly strange because at this point in my life, 2019, I'd managed hundreds of tenancies. Yes, I hadn't managed a block of flats, but had managed, a good, fair number of tenancies and experienced things that maybe landlords starting out do not. However, the lender was still not willing to lend. They weren't willing to budge. They were a mainstream buy-to-let lender. So I thought, well, these guys clearly aren't changing their mind. They're fixed on things. And sometimes when the underwriting team or someone within the organization decides on something, it's very hard to get this overturned. So me and my broker had a bit of a brainstorming session. What can we do to try and get this property mortgageable? So what my broker did was he spoke to a few more lenders who are obviously open to lending based on the fact that at this point in time, I did not own a block of flats. And there were lots of lenders willing to entertain this and willing to lend on this basis. So my lender found a very good lender, a lender that I'm still with to this day, who's been absolutely amazing and managed to mortgage the property. Yes, their rate was a slight increase on the original lender. I think if I'm not mistaken, it was about 0.3 of an increase. So it is an increase, but an increase that we can absorb. And certainly this particular property has worked out to be an absolutely phenomenal investment. So what do we do here? Well, first of all, we tried to contest the rejection, which failed. Sometimes it can prove successful, but sometimes not. But then what we did was we went back to the market and we found another lender that's willing to lend. And this is the beauty of going to a whole of market mortgage broker because, as the name suggests, they can scour the whole of the market to find the lender who they think is going to lend given all the circumstances. Whereas if you're going to a lender that's not whole of market, you may be forced to go down a narrow pool of lenders. Maybe some of those lenders aren't happy with your particular circumstances. Now, before we move on to the next rejection, which is quite strange to say, are you getting value from this video? Do you like this content? Please do consider liking the video. There's a thumbs up button somewhere below a picture of me. Please do press that because that will promote this video to other similar people watching the channel, and hopefully they can also benefit from the value that hopefully I'm putting forward in this video. So the second example, which is a very recent example, happened in the past 12 months, which is the mortgage was rejected at the valuation stage. Now, sometimes valuations can come back lower than what you have asked for. And let's face it, sometimes this does happen and it's okay. Now, they are still willing to lend, but they're just willing to lend based on a lower valuation. Now, you can contest this, and again, the odds of appealing successfully are quite slim, but if you can find comparables, recent comparables, ideally within the past 6 months, you have a very good chance of this contest being successful. However, in this particular experience and circumstance, it wasn't due to a lower valuation. The lender simply wasn't happy to lend on this property, and let me explain. So, there was a survey carried out at the property. My particular property was fine. Everything was happy. They were happy with the figures, they were happy with the condition. However, I then logged onto my emails a couple of days later and saw that they are refusing to lend on the property, and I thought, oh, this is strange. The surveyor, when I was at the property, said, your property's fine, everything's okay, the numbers match. So why are they not willing to lend? This is a bit odd. Now, what they had found was, this is when I'd left the property, the surveyor had looked next door, and the property that's next door to mine, it's a terraced property, is in need of some work. So the gutters aren't in the best condition, and the roof isn't in too good of a condition either. So what the surveyor has basically said is, because the condition of the property next door is not ideal, they are not willing to lend, which is the first time I've ever encountered this before. And I think it's a little OTT in my opinion, because yes, the property next door does need a little bit of work, not a huge amount of work, a little bit of work, but these houses, these terrace houses that were built, 60, 70, 80 years ago, these are bulletproof. A little bit of water from the house next door isn't going to affect my property. So they were unwilling to lend. So yes, the risk is minimal. However, the lender flat out refused to lend, and we can't really contest this. So again, we have to go back to the drawing board. Me and my broker had a discussion. Who can we approach that will lend on this property? And we found a mainstream buy-to-let lender which lent on it, not a problem at all. They weren't concerned with the property next door in any way, shape or form. Now, I'm digressing slightly, but this is also an opportunity, because I wrote a nice letter to the person that owns the property next door, basically saying what I've told you. The lender that I found, the original lender, was unwilling to lend on my property because of the condition of your property. Please, would you consider improving your property? If not, then potentially I can help you. I can recommend trades to do the works. But if you are looking to sell, I'm here. I've got many properties in the area and I really love the street, so I'm more than happy to have a coffee and a chat and see what we can do. Now, nothing has come from this as of yet, but again, it's a numbers game here, and I'm hoping in the future, maybe when the vendor does decide to sell, they'll get back in touch. Right, the third and the last example of my rejected mortgage, which is quite a niche one, but it will be applicable to some people watching, especially those that are a little bit more active in property and manage properties on others' behalf. So the third example is where this rejection was experienced in the underwriting phase. So the application got in fine, the valuation and the survey, again, completely fine. But after that, in the underwriting phase, where most of the due diligence is carried out, this was rejected. And it was rejected for this reason. It was rejected because in my limited company account, I had third-party rents coming in. Well, what on earth does this mean, Marco? So in the same limited company, I had rents coming in from other properties that I managed for other people. Now, technically, what the lender have argued is your company is not an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, because you're also having income from third-party rents over here. Now, actually, they're probably correct, and this is true, and it's something that I've never thought about. However, I'd secured many mortgages to this date, again, from many mainstream buy-to-let lenders who are completely fine and okay and comfortable with this. However, this particular lender said, no, we're not comfortable, even though I have existing mortgages with them, and these third-party rents have always been in the account, they're legacy rents. So this was a bit interesting, and the lender basically said, right, well, if you can divert these rents away to a separate entity and have 3 months showing that these rents aren't coming into the account, we'll lend money to you. Now, we could have done that and we could have waited and played it out. However, I deemed that it's best to go somewhere else and get a mortgage offer from a separate lender. So we did that, and in the meantime, I diverted the rents and changed the bank account details from those third-party rents to a separate entity to keep everything nice, clear and simple. Now, this was at the time extremely frustrating because the property was fine, everything to do with the property was completely fine, but the fact that it's on a technical side, it failed on the due diligence, being that this company is arguably not an SPV, was a real downer at the time. And especially so because I had lots of other lenders lending me money prior to this application, mainstream lenders, and they were okay, fine and happy with it. It wasn't as if we had hundreds of third-party rents coming into account. It was really nothing substantial. However, I have learned this lesson personally, and it is the right thing to not have these third-party rents coming into your SPV. So, quick tip here, if you do manage properties on behalf of other people, make sure those rents aren't coming into your SPV. Make sure those rents are not coming into your limited company that you use, and the sole purpose of that limited company is to invest in buy-to-let property. Really important point to note is, since diverting those rents away, I've had many mortgages from that lender who said, no, we're not willing to lend until you have 3 months with those rents elsewhere. So yes, we've fixed that problem. That lender is back on board, and to be honest, they do account for a large share of our mortgages. Big mainstream buy-to-let lender who have now returned back to us, which is absolutely great. So I'd like to conclude now with 3 really important points for you to think about when it comes to mortgage rejections and when it comes to applying for mortgages. Number 1, you will encounter rejections if you're buying in volume. It's just a numbers game. It could be something wrong with the property, it could be something wrong with the company, whatever it is. You will encounter rejections, and this is okay, this is normal, this is fine. Just because you've been rejected doesn't mean, oh gosh, I can't invest in property, or even that I can't buy this particular property. You will find another lender for it. And this follows on very nicely to number 2, there's always another lender in the market. So if things don't work out with the first lender you have approached, there will most likely be another lender that will consider your circumstances and lend on that property. So don't put, all your hope in the original lender. It's fine to call it a day and move on and find the next lender. And this is where it really helps to use a mortgage broker with buy-to-let experience. Number 3 is just to learn from mistakes. For example, if I take the third example that I've discussed here with you today, by having these third-party rents in my SPV, one lender wasn't comfortable with that. So yes, that technically, I suppose, is a mistake and something that in hindsight I shouldn't have done. So by learning from that mistake and diverting that money into a separate entity, again, I'm keeping everything nice and clean, everything clear and concise and simple, and the mortgage lenders are going to be happy. Now, before I leave you, I just want to stress the importance of having a real strong mortgage broker who specializes in buy-to-let property. Because if you have a mortgage broker who's a specialist in buy-to-let, they will know which lenders to approach given your circumstance. We're all different. You could be a first-time landlord, you could have a poor credit score, whatever it is. We're all very different, and that broker will know which lender to approach and which lender is most likely to lend you money on the particular deal. Not only that, as I've already mentioned in the video, if you have a whole of market buy-to-let mortgage broker, they can, as the name suggests, scour the whole of the market, and you're not limited to a panel of lenders. Now, if you want to be put in touch with my mortgage broker, who is the buy-to-let king, Paul Johnson, I've had him on the channel before. Paul is an incredible individual, quite remarkable. Things he can do with buy-to-let mortgages are out of this world. Then please do follow the link in the description, ms7.uk, click on use our supplies at the top and just tick the box that says mortgage broker, and I'll put you in touch with Paul. He also does residential mortgages, so if your current home comes up for remortgage anytime soon, or if you're looking to buy your very next property, then Paul is your man. So have you enjoyed this video? Maybe you've got some value from it. I'm hoping so. Please do comment if you have a question, and as you know, I respond to all questions personally. Now, what to watch next? I've got lots of really good videos all around the mortgage area of buy-to-let property and property investing. However, this is a particularly interesting one. Should you fix for 2 or 5 years? It's a killer question, and if you watch this video that you'll see somewhere on the screen here, hopefully by watching that video, you'll understand the answer to the question. All the very best with your property investing day. Goodbye.